Over to you, sir. Sahidullah, sir, from Chittagong.
Thank you. I'm really delighted to listen to Professor Pushpender Parsi, because he mentions many aspects, and also it's an honor really that he got the award in this time. Respected moderator Monish, Professor Dr. Monish, session chair Debbar Singh is very kind, and you, Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary, is well-known scholar across South Asia and even beyond, and Mr. Joy Singh, and my friend Dr. Shourabh Gupta. I am really delighted that you um, will discuss something very important. The founder Freire, who wrote all his good work between 1960 to 18 or 19. In spite of the date back, I must say that it's really relevant till now. But before I go for the discussion about the issues, I must uh, pay my tributes to Indian soldiers who sacrificed their lives in during the Bangladesh War of Liberation, because today is the time that whenever we were attacked by the occupation army from Pakistan here in Dhaka and Chittagong, where I'm living, and you know that 30 million, 3 million people actually died or were killed during the War of Liberation, and also around 5,000 Indian soldiers, they sacrificed their lives in Bangladesh territory during that period. I must pay my homage on the very day of 26th of March, 25, 5 March in the late night. Before This is the way how I express my respect to these great people, great brave son of this soil, and also the mothers and sisters who sacrifice their um, honor in lieu of our independence. Paulo Freire is actually, and he works for the people who are oppressed across the world. Dear friends and colleagues, we all know that Freire ideas evolved historically from the late 1940s to the 1990s, but the seminal contributions are between 1960s and 70s, in the time of authoritarianism, high level of analphabetism, and socioeconomic inequalities were high in Brazilian society, and his experience originated from such a situation. Although somebody may claim that it is old, we do believe Freire's work remains relevant because it applies to every situation where a society is confronted with a dispute over its model of development, meaning the way it wants to protect, produce, and share wealth, and how its members take part in this process. Respected colleagues and friends, for me, firstly, we need to understand Freire's ontological call and underlying principles that were recurrent throughout most of his thinking. Secondly, um, we trace the Freire's legacy by representing and discussing how Freire inspired three significant Libero-American thinkers and practitioners: Augusto Boal, Juan Diaz Bordebe, and De Souza Santos. Their research and practice have unveiled Freire's legacy into global pathway of theater, participatory communication, and realm of epistemology. And thirdly, Freire's vision of development and social change, unpicking how he navigates between a clearly normative vision of grounded in a utopian aspiration on one side, and very symmetric and rigorous methodology is liberating pedagogy on the other. I do believe our keynote speaker today, Dr. Saurabh Gupta, will focus on these three vital aspects during his speech. Dear friends and colleagues, perhaps we all are aware that Freire's ontological call is associated with five principles: those of humanity, empathy, love, hope, and dialogue, that he presented at the spirit of one of his main referential work, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, originally published in 1968, long day back. As he also recognized, it is an ontology that tends to divide people because it might be seen as too idealistic for some, while, while rejected by others who don't align with the critical tone and denunciation against the oppressor. My understanding is that his thought is strongly rooted in a Marxist analysis of society to some extent, of course, and Freire's vision places real people as well as institution in a power relationship framework, denying the possibility of a neutral position. As such, he takes a clear normative stand, but Freire's position is also contextual, as Professor Pushpendra Pal Singh already mentioned, and dynamic vision that points to windows, opportunity, hope, and transformation, all seen as a process that he can change both sides. We have found that communication is profoundly inscribed into his model of teaching and learning, of course. What he mentioned in the word dialogue, it is a part and parcel of permanent exchange between teachers and pupils. Wishbone takes argument a step further, struggling that communication is how we learn to be human, and highlighting how Freire's work displays several features that configure a blueprint of democratic communication that clashes with any manifestation of populism. Dialogue is therefore a cross-cutting principle in his vision. Similarly, Freire places humanity as a specific requirement to recognize that people and any people are knowledgeable. So every people are knowledgeable, they are not illiterate at all. They might be illiterate, but they are knowledgeable. Dialogue achieved through communication and with humility because that becomes a place of encounter in everyday life where knowledge is constructed and reconstructed on permanent basis. Humanity, in fact, suggested that authentic truth doesn't belong to any one individual or group, nor it is imposed by one group upon another. Authentic truth or authentic word in Freire's testimony is rather an outcome of permanent exercise of actions and reflection that takes into account the reality and the perspective of each part. Empathy goes beyond the generosity. The principle of love guide and a process that connects reasons with the senses. Overall, it is a model of development based on collective ties, including all beings, humans or not. Finally, the principle of hope is about trusting a new just social order as the horizon to pursue, like Eduardo Galeano's vision of Ethiopia, where every step towards it moves and a step away under the golden purpose of keeping one walking. Freire's liberating pedagogy was developed and refined over 650 years. His career, 50 years of his career from his first work in 1947, his passing in 1997. Although he was very visionary and philosophical, his thinking was grounded in practical experience that already mentioned by Professor Pushpanda and in a rigorous pedagogical methodology. That is the main aspect of our discussion today, I think. It made his thinking not only inspirational to many, but also accessible and applicable. Many social and development sectors, many social movements, for example, in the Arab Spring, and civil society organizations and communities engaging with questions of social justice and social changes have all been heavily inspired by the Paulo Freire, as the Indian movement of the sexual harassment of women. The first explores the Freire's influence upon theater for development, Augusto Boal's Forum Theater in particular. The second refers Freire's influence on participatory communication and communication for social change, illustrated by Juan Diaz Bordeaux's writing. Finally, and possibly most significantly, Freire has influenced Boaventura de Souza Santos' thinking and articulation of epistemologies of the South, which is more important than the everything. These draw significant lines of current debate about the development, in particular about the philosophy of science, and that informs debate and concept theories of development. The historical development and influence of Freire over these three thinkers reveal epistemological links, help understanding also connections between disconnect and consequential uprising flourishing in different parts of the world. As we mentioned before, the earlier are frequently triggered by policies that, although punctual, reveal the larger condition of inequality in a sense of power asymmetry experienced by billions of people living under the same unjust model of development that is consequently justified in dominant cognitive machines that under the liberal democratic system or so-called liberalism and market economy. They are outcry from the concrete experience on just trying to occupy the stage of claiming alternatives. As we have already evoked, experienced lack of participation and social inequality and not having the voice to speak constitute a general framework of power asymmetry in asymmetric democracy because on the top of a structural and historical inequalities, its citizens hardly get intervene in the redefining of social order, a barrier almost impossible to overtake, marginalized social group, and also overcome. I'd like to conclude with a quote from Freire himself. Quote, when I speak to intervention, I refer both to the inspiration for the radical change in society in such areas as economics, human relations, property, the rights to employment, to land, to education, to health, to reactionary positions where whose aim is to immobilize history and maintain an unjust socio-economic and cultural order. Unquote. Though this vision of Freire's actually insisted the connecting democracy from below, or radical democracy, and human liberation, and despite speaking about love and empathy, he also insisted on the right to be angry about the social injustice and in all forms. So angry or attack or counterattack is accepted by Freire's philosophy. Freire's bold vision of development goes hand in hand with a clear vision of work and kind and social change he envisages. There is a normality in his perspective of social change, and it connects to the goal of breaking an asymmetries to the method of touching down with action and reflection. It is no surprise at all, therefore, that many practitioners inspired by Freire say that the good communication doesn't come from the mind, but from the field that work on the mud of the poor. That is the critical aspects of the Freire's notion of communication and social change. I think that's enough from my side. Thank you very much for GCEC for giving me the opportunity to share the ideas of Freire and the nexus between asymmetrical power condition and communication for social change in new liberal world. And we do hope, I think Dr. Saurabh Gupta will touch on all these issues in his space. Thank you for listening and thank you for inviting me for this August gathering. I do hope all the best, all of you. Thank you very much.